All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome into the half. As you may notice, I am not here with Aaron Montgomery, as is usually the case. However, I do have a couple of special guests that have been brought in. So I have to say, I've been very lucky to be able to rely on some of the folks at the Embroidery Nerd group. And over on the Discord, I let out the link and said, hey, come on, guys. If you want to show up, you want to be on the show, you can. And I actually had a couple of great responders you may know as from this show as well as the Embroidery Nerd shows. First, we have Jeff. Jeff Fuller's in for Fuller Embroidery Works. So, Jeff, thank you for being on.
Absolutely.
And we have Jess Armenta from J Digitizing, who has been threatening a hostile takeover of the show. I don't know how he's going to manage that with no controls, but you can always attempt it through content. Hi, Justin.
Hey, I can try.
Hey.
Just shadow boot him now.
Boom.
Disappears.
Gone. Kick ban. No, not at all. I'd rather talk to Justin than ban him. He's a good guy. But we have Yosta coming in saying hi all. Everybody, if you are in the comments as you guys come in, I know sometimes people start rolling in real quick. If you have stuff you want to talk about, if you have comments, questions, things you want to talk about, Q&A for embroidery, it's a good chance right now that you might get an answer that's decent. So jump in, ask your questions, or derail us entirely with 4th of July barbecue tips. We don't care. We're just here to have fun for 30 minutes. So we have Yosta in. He says hi. Ramona's saying, is this going to be a half free-for-all? Yes, pretty much. Close enough. So, yeah, we're just going to talk about whatever we want to. So she's winking already. Yep. Come with your free-for-all and with your questions. Kristen says, hi, guys. Hi, Kristen. Happy to have you in. All right, folks. So we just got done with the Two Really Guys show. We had Christine Shreve talking about trade show pet peeves. So I thought I would open this up saying you guys are going to be showing up for the Applique Getaway in just 2 weeks. You guys have some trade show pet peeves, either from the side of working the trade show, teaching, or from the side of being an attendee. What do you feel about this stuff? Feel free to jump in. It just can't get any worse.
Well, this
say the truth. Yeah.
This is my first trade show as far as teaching or having a booth or anything. So I'll let you know after AG.
I will literally take you up on that.
But I mean, the trade shows that I've been to over the years, really no complaints. I mean, last year's Fort Worth seemed like it was quite a bit smaller, and I think that had to do with COVID restrictions and whatnot and people traveling. So, but yeah, I've always enjoyed the shows that I've gone to.
Yeah, I mean, I think that largely we all know people are trying to make this the best it can be, but there's no lying that trade shows are not post-pandemic what they were pre.
Right.
For sure. Yeah. And they're certainly not. If you guys heard this morning on Trailer Guys, Terry shared what trade shows were like in the good old days of trade shows where that was the only place we could meet pre-internet. Trade shows were a whole different thing back in those days. You have to imagine that Terry did his first trade show, I believe, the year I was born. So we're talking about some old school trade show stuff, and we don't have the kind of spectacle and events that they had back in the day.
I know Long Beach used to be a party.
Huge.
It was huge. They would have huge organized parties at night and big gatherings on the Queen Mary. It was pretty fun.
Yeah, I didn't get to go out in that era. So Jeff, how about you? What's your first kind of trade show pet peeve? You've been around some stuff at the trade shows already.
I would say for attending, probably the biggest one is, and it wasn't this way the last couple I've been to, but when you go and you're interested in looking at a piece of equipment or something, there's usually not a salesman that's available to talk to you because they're kind of swarmed with people. And so you show up there and you kind of stand around and wait and wait and wait. And then eventually you give up and say, I'll come back later. And long story short, you probably don't check out the equipment or get your questions answered, but you fill out for an email thing and then you get the 8,000 emails after the show. So that would probably be my biggest pet peeve attending. As far as like teaching at them, that kind of stuff, I would say they're not as beginner friendly. Like they always have some sort of assumed knowledge that you know how teaching at a trade show works. Or
surely.
So when you go there to teach for your very first time, you're like a fish out of water, and they're just assuming you have this knowledge already and you don't have it. So and that can be really, really frustrating when you're trying to figure things out you've never done before, and there's not really someone, if you're lucky, you find someone that you can lean on that'll answer those questions. But I think that's probably the hardest thing from the teaching side when you're starting to get into it.
Yeah, I think that's probably the case with most of them. I find that it's uneven across the board. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to call out trade shows or particular trade shows on this one. I will say the folks at DAX have been very excellent with kind of marshaling people around. And like we always say about DAX, Scott and Margie will literally make sure that you've eaten your lunch. It's kind of like your mom and dad showing up and making sure that you're taking care of yourself and drinking water. They will actually talk to you as someone who's teaching there and take care of you. But that's really not the usual way things go. Usually it's about making sure you're there, and yes, they want to check on you, but most of the time they're used to kind of the old industry heads, which I guess I now am, but I still feel like somebody who's still new to this thing, where you show up, you're 30 minutes early, you got your stuff ready. If you have an extra HDMI cable, if they don't, and you're going to be ready to present when time comes, they kind of do expect that. I think that's true. Though I will say one of my pet peeves from the other side of it is, whenever somebody has asked me, why don't I get to teach at trade shows? I'm like, did you submit any ideas when they asked for them? And they're like, what's that? I'm like, did you reach out to anybody at the trade show to teach? No, that's not. Lots of people do ask and they just want some help. And I've always been really, forward about making sure I connect people who I think are, good to do that stuff. But there's been a couple people like, man, I don't get why are these guys up here? Why is this person teaching? I should be doing that. I'm like, please, everybody reach out to the to the organizers and get up there. I know I did quite a lot of sessions for the previous Impressions Expo, and the joke was, it was like the Erich Campbell wing. I would have gladly taught 2 less of the 6 sessions that I was doing and had someone else teach those. That was a lot to manage in one show. I would have been happy to have a cavalcade of stars in the embroidery world instead of just me running back and forth the sessions. So, get out there and try, folks.
I mean, I guess your other thing could be is that if you have back-to-back sessions, they should put them in the same classroom.
That would be awesome. Yeah, that would be awesome.
You're not.
There's the other trade show pet peeve for me, and I guess I'm being a jerk today, but fine. I'll just be the bad guy. If you get a speaker and you give them 2 sessions, please don't bookend the sessions. Don't give them the first day at the beginning of the show and the last day at the last part of the show, because then they have to stay at the show. And if they're not currently running a booth or anything, they're paying for all of the lodging and everything in between to teach those 2 sessions. So organizers, please.
I guess that's one pet peeve that I could foresee being a teacher and having a booth and whatnot, is just hearing some of the people that are going to be at AG.
Yep.
They're talking about their schedule of, well, I have this class and then I have to be here, then I have to be here, then I have to be here. It's like, I understand trade shows are compact usually into 2 to 3 days.
Yep.
So it's like as much as you can do in those 2 to 3 days, I'm sure it's going to be pretty crazy.
It is. I mean, and I think that's the hard part, is the question is, do we try and pack things together because we want to have enough content there, but then it's hard if you really do want to do all the educational content. You almost can't. And I think that's fair to say. I don't know how we fix that. I do think, though, Jeff's right about trying to get the session rooms where you're not literally, hiking for 2 miles.
The sign jokes. I remember the sign jokes. You're almost there. You're getting your steps in today. A little further. We lied on last time. A lot further.
Oh yeah, Impressions Fort Worth. It was a real hike. I got my 10,000 steps inside that hall with no problems. So that's for real. Sometimes it is hard. At least they had signage. There was a previous year, and I won't say which show it was, that I went to the show, and here I am. I am somebody who's teaching, and I couldn't find my way to the education booths. Nobody knew where they were. Found out I had to walk up 2 sets of stairs and off to a section of the trade show hall that was not particularly well lit or had signs. I felt like I was in some sort of like a survival horror video game by the time I got to where I was going. There was a lot of like hallways and weird angles by the time I got there. And
lights are flickering in the hallway.
Yeah, 100%. The rooms were fine, but the travel to the room was like not well marked. And everybody showed up and was like, is this where I'm supposed to be? You just like try not to make jokes at them because you'll literally scare them off. Yeah, no. Good signage is a plus, even if you have to hike. All right, so we have a couple of more commenters in. We'll jump folks in. Let's see here. We have Barb saying, happy Friday, everyone, from North Central Minnesota. Thank you, Barb. Cindy King is in saying, hey, guys. Ramona says, I think the EEM and AG are more geared to the home crafter crossover. Yeah, I think that's probably fair to say, but that doesn't mean there's nothing to learn there. So if you are like I said, if you're a crusty old commercial guy like myself, you may still find some good stuff. We have these educators here who are going to be doing AG, so you know that you've got some good people teaching. Cindy is taking Adam's class just to support him. Hey, go for it. Learn to be a young entrepreneur, Cindy. Go for
He's
it.
pretty excited. He's
Yeah.
done with his PowerPoint. I haven't started mine yet.
The children are our future, truly.
Hey, can I have Adam help me with mine?
No.
It's like I told Christine, don't tell everybody that we don't have things ready till the last minute. I want them to believe we're still superhuman, awesome decorators.
I was
Prepared.
telling Jeff last night, I'm like, this is just reminiscent of the test that I crammed for the night before, or that project that you had 3 months to do and you're trying to finish it the night before. Yeah, I'm feeling like I'm back in school again.
Yep.
And we still have
it is
weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't say that because your brain will hear I still have 2 weeks and really believe that stuff. That's dangerous.
Justin is due tomorrow.
Yeah, it's due tomorrow, Justin.
It's due tomorrow.
I wish somebody would tell me that when I needed it.
My plan is to use the 3-day weekend to finish it. Yeah.
Plans, yes. Those never go awry. All right. Though I guess that is the heartening thing to tell people is like, hey, you too can present at a show if you want to. Trust me, we're not all superhuman. By all means, we're doing stuff last minute. Also, no comment on how many people in creative industries like ours may or may not have ADHD. Zero comment there. Don't want to talk about it. Next question. Procrastination and the inability to hold on to a task may or may not be something I've seen a lot in our industry.
Adam got me fidget toys.
No comment. May or may not be fidgeting with something under the desk as we speak because I usually have something in my hands while I'm talking on the show as well. So yeah, fidgeting is for real. Okay, Ramona says, when you think you're done, keep on going. Yes. Try and stay in the focus zone as long as you can. Kristen says, I always have trouble deciding between the available seminars. So much great content to choose from. Though that's great. That is a good problem to have. Back in the day, I remember going to some of the trade shows and realizing that none of the classes are going to apply to me at all. And there was really no content. I think the problem we sometimes have, and I think it's kind of like what Jeff said, it's hard to decide for showrunners and for us teaching at shows. Do we skew beginner? Do we skew expert? And how do we serve an entire world of people who are coming from all different backgrounds? And I think that's a problem kind of every year, trying to figure out what we can do to make sure it's applicable to everybody. It's a better problem to have that you have too much to see than too little, I'll tell you the truth.
Or my other favorite, you have two classes that you really want to attend and they're at the same time.
Happens a lot. If you're at a multi-decoration show, they sometimes will try to stagger. But if you're somebody like a lot of us where you print and do embroidery, you may find that you're just stuck. All right. So a couple more comments. Let's bring in, we have from MAS Santa Fe. We have Facebook user. Sorry. I know you've got your wrong icon on there. Have to go get verified again. But we also have Ramona pimping AG for you guys. So everybody who's at Applicate Getaway getting free advertisement from Ramona right now. AG is also doing virtual this fall to help cover that overlap. Yes, indeed. Virtual classes are good too, though. I will say there's something that you miss. As much as I've taught lots of virtual stuff, there's something you miss from being hands-on. You guys kind of agree with that? Or what do you think you get from being hands-on with people, being direct with people instead of just doing virtual classes?
Well, I mean, personally, I think when you're looking at a room full of people, you can tell when they don't get it and you need to pivot and kind of explain it a different way or simplify it a different way. When you're teaching online, you don't get that kind of vision. You don't see them yawn and think, okay, well, I need to get off this slide because they're tired. Or you don't see the eye roll or the complete deer in the headlights look like, I don't understand a word you're saying. You don't get any of that when you're teaching online. And so you also miss the energy, feeding off the energy of the room. So totally. That's, virtual. I really like virtual classes because I can attend it from my house. But from the attending side, you don't really get all your questions asked or answered that you really want to. Mm-hmm. There's usually a chat, like we've got the chat going here. it's great to have that in a virtual class, but then sometimes the presenters miss the questions. And so from the attending side, it's great because I can do it in my pajamas, but I'm sacrificing the possibility of getting my questions answered. And from the teaching side, you don't know if they're getting it or not. There's usually an 8 to 20 second delay between what you say and whether or not they ask a question. So you seem to be circling back. The people that really have this under, like you guys at the Two Regular Guys show, if you're watching in the comments and you're commenting on the show, you cannot tell that there's a delay because they know how to handle it. You know how to handle that delay. You know how to talk through it and deal with it. But that's not always the case. So that's my long-winded answer.
That's a good answer, though. I mean, Justin, you're going to be teaching in person shortly. What are you looking forward to?
Like Jeff said, I was lucky enough to have all the webinars that I've done. Jeff was, in the background fielding questions for me. So just kind of seeing the process from the first one that we did to the last one that we did, it was a lot more smooth. We talked about how we're going to break for questions. I think it was a little bit more, like Jeff said, getting used to that delay and whatnot. It is going to be a huge change, I think, switching over to live. There is those benefits, like Jeff said. You can see the faces. You can see if someone's really not getting the question. Just reading a question off the chat, sometimes I'm like, I'm not exactly what you're referring to.
Yeah.
I think in person it's going to be a lot easier to answer those questions. The biggest thing with me is, it's like Jeff said, especially a show like AG where it's mainly craft home embroiderers. I'm teaching kind of a level type of class that's more industrial, commercial embroidery. Yeah. So I got to get that feel of how many people know what the heck I'm talking about, have tried to kind of get into that 3D prof genre. So that's kind of the balance that I'm worried about as far as live, especially at this show.
Shows are all different. That's something I'll say, certainly having done a host of different shows. I did some stuff for the NNEP folks out at one of the NBM shows. I've done, believe it or not, I've actually taught at a fully home market, like a sew and vac shop show. If you guys don't know that these exist, in the commercial world, we don't know they exist, and people who have been around the home and craft market know for sure they exist. I've taught at those, and it is an absolutely different world. Those are mostly sales events. I'll be honest; most of it is a pitch. I went and tried to do education, and they were like, "Get to the pitch." There were times where they're like, "Okay, the education's cool and all, but what can you sell me? I'm here to make purchases." Very different vibe entirely. And I'd say even among the shows between DAX and Impressions, different vibes. Certainly, I think it really does change things. There are probably, in the crossover markets, I find that they want more creative. They want to know more hands-on how-to. Whereas I have been and I've been doing the creative and hands-on stuff in the impression shows and had a couple people in there who are absolutely there for business only. They do not love what they're doing. They're like, I need to know how to make this work so it's faster for more money. And I am not looking for the creative side of this. And I've had that rarely. Usually there's still a lot of crossover, but I've had that a couple times where people are just like, all right, enough talking about this froofy stuff. How do I make more money right now? But you don't get that as much at like the crossover shows, and you definitely don't hear that at the home shows as much. So it's finding your audience is real.
I mean, if you haven't been to one of those sew and vac shows, because I've been to one.
Yeah.
It was like I spent $300, $400, and I didn't plan on buying anything. It's heavy. Like it's not high pressure sales, but it's heavy sales pitch. You learn a lot about the products that they carry.
Yes.
But it is primarily a sales thing and a little bit less education. So
I mean, can you learn at them? Yes, you can. A lot of this stuff is also workshop based, where it's more like we're going to sit in front of machines and press buttons, and you're going to tell us how to press buttons and when. It's a lot more of that kind of environment. And those of us who are used to the commercial shows, very different environment, very different way that they like to be taught. So I don't think AG is that. You guys have done AG more than I have, and I feel like AG is more of a crossover show, kind of like DAX, but further on the home craft side. Whereas DAX is a little further commercial, but still has plenty of home craft exposure.
I think the easiest way to tell between like fully commercial and fully home market is the amount of stuff you can buy on the showroom floor. Because when you get into the home stuff, it's all shopping. And when you get into the kind of the crossover like Dax, there's a couple places that set up booths to shop and a couple of places that don't. And then you get into like impressions and you're not allowed to buy anything on the floor or sell anything on the floor.
Yeah. So, yeah, you're right. It's totally true. The fully commercial shows that are not, you're not setting up stores. It's just not happening. You're not going to be buying a lot of scraps on the show floor, not even as much. But we have a couple more people who are jumping in. Cindy says, I bought the virtual, never had time to go back and watch. Yeah, go back and watch. I like this comment from Ramona as well, as far as that split. She loves the in-person, but use the virtual for content, repeat, and refresh. Yeah, I think that's a great way to do it. I think that's a fantastic way to handle things. In person is great. And hey, when you can't do it, that's the other great thing. The fact we have virtual now. I'm from the middle of New Mexico. It's like a landlocked island here in Albuquerque. We're hours from anywhere. And I know a lot of folks are in the same boat. It's hard to get out to the coasts regularly. And I didn't up until the point I was teaching. I only went very, very sparingly. So I've got to say the virtual has allowed it to be a lot more integrated for everybody across the country. And I think that's fair. Ramona says, I used to go to those machine back shows before I found trade shows. I used to buy supplies on sale and got into digitizing classes. Yeah. I mean, you can learn some stuff. I'm not by no means do I want to say that none of those shows have any learning. It is a very different animal to the stuff you guys are used to if you're following all of us.
I mean, I know that my first show that I did, it was at the local quilt shop.
Yeah.
I learned more about stabilizers and needles and all of that than I wanted to. And when it came to the digitizing software, they were like, look at this new feature. And for only $2,000-$3,000 today, you can have this cool new feature and everything else. And it was, you know, the digitizing was so low, but I still learned a ton about stabilizers, particularly to that company. But, you know, you learn it might not be digitizing, but they have to teach you about the stabilizer to tell you why it's better than XYZ to try to get you to buy it. So it kind of goes into that sales pitch. I mean, they gave me a mathematical formula to support how much stabilizer you need to use per design, which was a little bit different than what you normally get. So
totally.
It just kind of depends what you're really wanting to learn.
I think that's fair. But I think, you know, the crossover market, like Justin really kind of hit the nail on the head. You don't know until you get there to some degree who is there and who's going to be there. And I'm going to actually say this, even in regions, when I first did the DAC shows, it was really hard because the Kansas show is not the same as the Minnesota show, is not the same as the Illinois show. And I came to the Kansas show and thought that I had bombed, and they're like, oh, no, that's the Kansas show, and that's how the Kansas responds. And I'm like, really? I'm like, I thought people hated that stuff. Got all these great remarks back on the everybody has these like evaluation forms. If you guys don't know, yes, we do eventually get to see those. But when I got back my evaluation scores, I'm like, is this the same group of people that was sitting in that class? Because I thought they hated me by the end of that show. They were not super responsive in Kansas. But then I found out Kansas crew is just a different kind of response than I got from Minnesota crew and the rest. So it was just you kind of just get used to it.
I guess I going to the show not knowing what to expect if you know this crowd or typical group that come to the show, if they are going to be interested in something like that. Like I said, 3D Puff is, I think, generally a commercial element that you see. But I guess the numbers in my class are gonna tell me where you know, if I show up to teach and I got 3 people in the class, and like, this probably isn't the show to teach something like this at.
You never know. I mean, it's hard because sometimes it might not work that way, but you may also have the most engaged people ever who still love it, who show up. And here's what I think I'm going to tell you flat out. So I'm going to prepare you as like, I'll be like a fake mentor here right now, Justin, since I had to do this myself with nobody preparing me. If one person is super sleepy and crashing out in your class, it doesn't mean you suck. People often bring someone with them that doesn't do what they're doing and force them to sit through your class. It happens a lot. And at the home and crossover shows, it happens about twice as much to me as it happens in the commercial shows. It doesn't mean you suck just because there's one person in the back row sleeping. You could have your best class ever. Somebody in that class is not engaged.
Good to know. Good to know.
when you find somebody who's really tuned in, look at them for the reaction and don't worry about the two people who are in the back on their phone. Because invariably, especially the more people you have in a class, the more likely you're going to be like, those of us who care about this stuff get super focused on the person who's not engaged. And we kind of try and teach them really hard. That is not the way to do this.
Start snapping your finger. Hey, pay attention.
Yeah, if you start zeroing in on the one person who hates it, you're not going to teach the same way as if you start looking at the general crowd and move your eyes around. Don't focus in on the one person who you can't get, because there are some fish you are never going to land. Oh man. All right, so we have a couple more things. Cindy says, Justin, they have so many crossover classes, so I'm sure it's difficult for people to pick up the class. Hey, I think a lot of people like 3D foam. It's more than you would think. And Justin's an awesome teacher. We know that he does well. So everybody check it out.
I think even people that are intrigued by it are going to sign up for the class. They may never actually do it, but they're going to learn more about it and think, oh, that I can do that. I want to try it. Or they're going to sit there and they're going to go, that's way more than I ever wanted to get into this. And I've fully decided now that I'm not going to do that.
No, if you teach digitizing ever, you've had somebody come up to the end and go, so I know now that I don't want to do this. Who would you recommend, or can you do all my work? Prepare for that. Hey, at least you do. JA Digitizing's real. If somebody comes up to Justin at the end and says, hey, I don't want to do this, he has something to go to.
This is true. This is true.
All right. So, and by the way, Cindy's gonna be in your class. So, Cindy, no sleeping. Put down the phone. You're gonna mess up Justin's vibe.
Looking forward to seeing you again, Cindy.
I'm gonna be messaging Cindy. How's Justin doing? Throw something.
Throw something. No, totally. And I think Ramon is right on this one. The home crafters see this technique in all the groups. Of course, they want to find out how to do it. And I think that the split is so much less than it used to be. When I first started, it really was like people with 4-inch square hoops only, and who definitely could not do all the things we did on the commercial machines. That is not how it is now. People are savvy. There's more going on between that kind of crossover market.
I mean, an industrial person is going to say, my machine can do it. How am I going to make money at it? And a home person is going to go, how can I do that on my machine? And they're going to figure it out. I'm going to take this sensor off so that it doesn't detect my pressure foot's up, so I can sew thicker items.
Not to lie, because I don't have access to a smaller home machine, but Jeff is actually taking some of my designs and telling me the limitations and the pros and cons of trying to run the stuff I'm teaching on those type of machines. So it's a big.
I'll say this. I have staring at it, a Brother PE770 from like Walmart.com, and ran stuff on it. Because once I realized I was going to be in more crossover spaces, I'm like, all right, if I just go big iron Tajima on everything, I'm probably not going to know how this works. You find out things about your digitizing you didn't know. Like, wow, when you only have one little point of contact that's holding on a hoop, excess density makes the whole hoop flap up and down. Using the standard materials that you are used to using for your commercial world. You definitely have to have a different hand.
My favorite
machines.
I should have sequenced this better so I don't have to change the damn thread.
Now,
when you're doing it on that and it just and goes, you don't even think about it. You're listening for like bird's nest, you're listening for thread breaks. When you're sitting at a home machine and it stops and you look up and go, oh, it's not done with all of that. Now I got to change.
I'm glad I kind of grew up on 6-needle machines, because that makes you think about that. 6 and 9s were my very first machines were all 6s, and then the machines that I worked on the most, I think, were really 9s for a long time. So I'm fairly efficient. If you came up on the 15s, I think you're gonna hurt a little bit going down to 1.
I started on a 1, and I would just sit there. I'm really fast at changing the thread on a single needle. I don't like to do it, but I'm really fast. So I was running Adam was testing one of his designs, and we had some text, and we sequenced that. We didn't pay attention to the sequence. So it was one color text, another color text, and then it went back to that color text. And when it was sitting on that machine, I was like, change the file halfway through this file, and I don't want to deal with this. Like, it just, the patience that people in the home market have for sitting at their machine and changing thread is amazing.
Yep. If you ever wondered why the embroidery library designs with 18,000 color changes on them work, that is a different animal.
Earlier on in my career, I think the first time I got a customer that was actually a home embroiderer, I send a design and I do my usual style and kind of break up the design to make sure the registration's gonna work.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're coming back to me saying, can you group all the red elements together, all the black? I'm like, why are you asking me this? Like, well, I have a single needle and I don't want to change thread that many times. I'm like, a single needle that exists?
Justin's gonna have one in his home workshop.
You need to.
I may have
to.
Yeah.
Trust me, I think it is a worthwhile purchase to have. They do not behave the way that we're used to. Those of us who kind of grew up on the big iron. Yeah, for sure. It's not always the not always the easiest thing to get your head around. But
mine adds 0.2 pull comp to every set automatically. It's in the machine. I can't change it. It adds 0.2 pull comp to everything.
that is not at all frustrating. Though I will say you guys got a couple good comments here from someone who knows better about education in the market. Lisa Shaw says Dynamite Duo J&J. So you guys now have a new name. So I'll just remind you of that repeatedly. You are now the Dynamite Duo. Enjoy that. So thank you, Lisa. And Ramona says, or they resort the design file. I think is what you mean by that. Probably not resort. Resort the design file and don't understand why there's stitch running across the top from left to the right. This is where I'm going to be a homer and say what I like about Embrilliance's color sort is it actually calculates and says, is anything on top of anything else before it color sorts? So if you have a software that has a smart color sort, use that instead of just dragging stuff around, because the smart color sort says, hey, is there stitches on top of this that probably shouldn't be underneath this, and checks for it. But if you just drag all your colors around, yeah, you will get travel stitches, especially from folks like us who do commercial work who use travel stitches instead of jumping all around.
Yeah.
You will definitely run something on top of your favorite satin stitch element. Gonna happen for sure. All right, so we are officially at the end of the show. I have not cut anybody off. I know it's been, it was the history that we always cut people off, but I don't feel like when we're doing these free-for-alls that it works that well. Do you guys have a final thought about trade shows, about what you want to pimp for your stuff you're doing later? Do you want to share something? Jeff, we'll start with you. What do you want to share at the end of the show?
So we've got Applique Getaway coming up. We're really excited to be teaching at that. There's going to be Justin, me, Matt, Adam, Chris. Dean Shreve's going to be there. Lisa Shaw's going to be there. Sheila Ryan, Nikki Adamkovich. There's going to be a pretty big lineup, so it's going to be a lot of fun. Make sure you go and sign up. Other than that, we don't have a lot coming up as far as the embroidery nerd. So that's everything I want to throw out there.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, me, Matt, Jeff, and Adam, we all are teaching individual classes. We're going to have a table together. It's kind of a umbrella of embroidery nerd table, but then our individual businesses are going to be featured in what we do, and you'll be selling the Puff Pro.
Oh, there we go. Let me
the 3D
pull
Puff
down the
Pro
banner so you can see it. So here we go. Solo layout. There's 3D Puff Pro. So if you guys don't know about that, that's Justin's tool for poking in little fuzzies and pieces of foam without destroying your design.
Yes. Good for the cleanup process of 3D Puff. But I'll have that there. Each of us will have some stuff that we'll be selling at the booth. So come check us out.
All right. So thank you guys for being on. I appreciate it. And from everybody at the half, which is now, I guess, everybody, hopefully you guys have a good 3-day weekend. And, you know what I always say about trade shows. For the trade shows. That's what I say. Try them out, guys.
Ask Justin about his tool.
Yes.
I was looking forward to getting cut off.